Welcome to This Podcast Needs a Name podcast, the show that proves that everyone can be creative even if they don't think they are. So we have two guests, one host, Infinite Sparks, no name, seriously, no name. Today's episode brings together two incredibly creative minds who live and breathe in imagination in totally different ways, but they share the same creative heartbeat. First up is my good friend Konya, right? I did it right. Kanja Chen, producer, writer, and Muppeteer who somehow channels pure joy through foam and fabric. He's a writer. He's done some incredible stuff, and he's got a lot of incredible stuff coming up. He's worked with the iconic Jim Henson Company, brings stories to life that remind us all of play more, and embodies the beautiful collision between art, humor, and heart. My good friend Kanja Chen. Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, how are you?
And my other guest is, in fact, I never knew this was a career choice, so I'm like really intrigued and excited. Touche, he's a designer, brand architect, and creative force behind Touche, a luxury headwear line that turns fashion into personal expression. His work is bold, intentional, and full of soul, blending craftsmanship, culture, and confidence into something much bigger than just style. And if anybody is ready to talk style, it's definitely me. So, I'm hoping to raise my game after all this. Welcome, Letitia. So good to have you on board. I really appreciate it. So together we are going to talk about creativity, what sparks it, what gets you excited, what has inspired you all, and how you live it every day. And most of all, what are the challenges you face? Right? Everybody has imposter syndrome. Everybody has those little demons in their head, and that's something I always like to talk about because I'm one of those people that does have those little voices in their head. It's always second guessing you and things like that. So I would love to welcome you guys to This Podcast Needs a Name podcast. So let's see what we can do. So I want to start with, I think it's the most important question is, what is your origin story? How did you two end up in these very unique careers that I think, look, everybody wears a hat once in a while. Everybody loves a puppet and a muppet and so forth. Like, I think they're just unique careers. Like, where did you start? So, Letitia, let's start with you. How did you get into this? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, I mean, so just to give some context on the origin of it, family is Jamaican, and like most immigrant parents, we spend a lot of time with our grandparents. And so, growing up with my grandfather, he was always dressed really impeccable, always wearing suits and always wearing beautiful hats. And I would walk around the house pretending to be like him, wearing this beautiful black rabbit fur felt hat. And he would always take it off and he would say, hey, when you get older, I'll give you one. And true to his word, I was around 18, I believe 18 or 17, 18. And he gave me this beautiful black rabbit fur felt hat that he collected from his trips around the United States in the early 40s. And two things happened in that moment. One, the hat fitted me like a glove, and it was the same hat that I tried on as a child. And then two, within that moment, I realized that in his absence, because he passed not too long after, in his absence, me wearing this hat felt like he was still with me. And I thought that was kind of cool. I thought it was right cool that you could have this attachment to this accessory. And I kind of fell down the rabbit hole after that because I felt like I wanted to express and show my love for hats with others. So with this North Star, which was I believe that hats are more than just fashion accessories, they're works of art. I then kind of began this journey of saying to myself, how can I show this? Can I show it through storytelling? Can I show it through, collaboration? Can I show it through experiences? And I just went down that path. And the very first path was to start a blog. And this was back when blogging was cool, back in 2011, 12 with Tumblr. And my initial mission was just to go around the streets of London, taking street style portraits of people wearing hats. That's all I wanted to do. And I remember the very first time I went out there, it was during London Fashion Week. And I approached this guy and I was like, hey, can I take your photo? And he's like, yeah, of course. And he starts getting himself nice and tidy and ready. And I was like, oh, no, I just want to take a photo of your hat. And he looked at me and he's like, wow, he goes, no one's ever no one's ever complimented my hat and no one ever wanted to take a photo of my hat. He goes, I think you're onto something. And he wasn't wrong because in that year, uh, Hatback Town, which was the name of the blog at the time, it kind of caught a win of its own, and I ended up being able to grow this kind of global community of hat lovers and niche creatives. And by about the early 2013, kind of early January, I started to kind of catch the eye and the attention of milliners, which at the time I knew nothing about. And yeah, they invited me
Milliners,
into their
say it again.
studios.
What are they?
Milliners.
Mill. Okay.
Yeah, so milliners historically are individuals who make women's hats, but now the word has become its own thing, and now it's just known as hat makers. And so I came into studios and learned how to make hats with milliners, and got to hang out with like some of the most like iconic milliners in the world, and it was so cool and so fun. And whilst I was with them, I noticed something. I was like, oh wow, they're really good at creating and they're really good at making things, but often struggle with telling their story. They often struggle with marketing. And so I said to myself, given my background in marketing, I said, you know what? I'm gonna start helping hat brands and hat makers with their marketing and their branding. And then that became my next thing. I said to myself, okay, let's go down that route. And I positioned myself as a hat consultant, also known as Mr. Hat. And I became the go-to guy for any hat brand who needed help with, kind of gaining brand awareness, and I caught the
Nice.
attention of Lock and Co Hatters, which is the oldest hat brand in the world, and they hired me to kind of come on and help essentially take them from the past into the future and attract the younger generation. And I just continued in that path. And every time I hit a really big accomplishment, I said to myself, what else can I do with this? Where else can I go with this? And it went from storytelling to collaborations, not just in terms of design, but also in terms of experiences. I then began throwing events. Within these events specifically, I would have the milliners as the star of the show. So most events, people would have DJs and artists. I would have the milliners center stage, so to speak. And so, yeah, that was just me trying to find a way to kind of continue to tell or express my love for hats through this North Star of believing that hats are more than just fashion accessories, that works of art.
Love that. Wow. Um, Kanya, how did you end up where you are? Because I think it's a much different story.
It's very different. I mean, I want to take 1 second, Latouche, just to say, it's funny being a bald guy. I know I have to wear hats now to protect my head from the sun, but when I was
Absolutely.
younger, I remember, I'm Toronto. I'm a Toronto guy, so the Blue Jays, go
Nice.
Blue Jays.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
when I grew up, I bought a hat from Kansas City because my initials for Kanja Chen is KC,
Oh,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
I
and
know
I
where this
wore
is
that.
going.
Right, and that hat became a part of my identity, and it was huge. And we often, when we were younger, I just think back to how connected I was to a lot of what I wore. Like it was a very emotional, creative, artistic
Yeah.
expression when you're younger, and doesn't always stay that way when you get older. So I love it. I love
It's
your
it's
story.
the one I think it's the one piece of
Amazing.
apparel that you can wear with your favorite team or your favorite, sort of sense of style that isn't you can't take a sweatshirt with your Kansas City or your Toronto Blue Jays sometimes to a nice dinner, right? But you can always wear a hat. You can always sneak a hat into the conversation or something like that. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting platform, and the fact that you found it as a way to sort of a niche that you almost created, because I don't know anybody else who does what you do, is really, I think, sort of the cool creative side of it. But Kanye, let's talk a little bit about your area of material and foam and things like that. Like, how did you get to be a Muppeteer, man?
Yeah. So and the term Muppeteer is such a contentious term because um, like in the UK, being a Muppet is something very different than in North America. The other thing too is, is a Muppet just a character from the Muppets, Disney's Muppets? Is a Muppet a character that's been made by the Jim Henson Company? Is that a Muppet? You know what I mean? So there's this whole argument. So I am currently a puppeteer on Fraggle Rock, Back to the Rock. So I'm a Fraggle Rock puppeteer, and through that I've worked with the Jim Henson Company. But if you go back years and years ago, people ask, well, how did you start? How did you start with puppetry? And for me, I would argue that I started puppeteering the moment I started playing with toys and giving them life and voices. And that was the beginning of all of my my puppetry skills. I started playing with GI Joes and dinosaurs and farm animals, and just kind of that was a part of it. I understood that I could breathe life into inanimate objects through how I moved and interacted with it. And so my journey did not take me directly to puppeteering. In fact, I ended up being a teacher first, and in Canada, teaching career is wonderful. I think UK as well. It's quite respected, and we're paid very very nicely. It's a great honorable career, and I love it, and I loved it, and but I never gave up on my love of puppetry. So when I started teachers college, I built my first puppet, and I was just, everyone has their hobbies. I was the guy who just would try to learn more and more about how to build puppets and how to puppeteer, and I'd set up a camera in my basement. I just kept practicing day after day, and review and fix, and just that was what I did. And so for 21 years, I spent my time teaching. I was mostly a kindergarten teacher. I taught kindergarten all the way to grade 7, which are 12-year-olds. And but I never gave up on the puppetry. I often would work on things on the weekends or summers when I had those times off, but I could never break in because I wasn't a full-time puppeteer. If there was a show, I could never do it. So anyways, fast forward to the pandemic, I actually started getting burnt out from teaching. I was doing a lot of leadership. And at the same time, I took a step away from teaching, just to kind of get my bearings again. But at the same time, I ended up getting an email from the Jim Henson Company, who I had trained with years earlier. And they said, we want you to audition for your childhood favorite show, Fraggle Rock. And I remember saying to my wife, who's also a teacher, and it's during the middle of COVID, we have 3 kids. I said, I can't audition for this. It's ridiculous. I just took a leadership role in the school. And she said, if you don't audition, you'll regret it your entire life.
You did well on the marriage front, man.
Yes,
I
I'm
totally
glad
did.
she said that.
absolutely.
I totally did. So I auditioned, and then they were like, well, we want to hire you. So I was like, okay, well, that was fun, but I can't take it because it's, and it's in another province. I can't leave during COVID. My family needs me. And she took me by the shoulders and said, if you don't go, you'll regret it your entire life. So I packed up. I went across.
How many years ago, Kanja?
That was 4 years ago.
Okay.
It's 2021.
Oh my gosh! Wow, you've come far in just 4 years. That's amazing.
4 years. So I did it, and I went across, and I ended up. I joked that I would have swept the floors for that show, that series. I like they didn't even have to pay me just to be there. And we did some internal auditions, and I ended up auditioning for a character that I'd never heard of, and got a text from John Tartaglia, who is pretty much my hero. If you don't know him, look him up. Incredible human being. But he said, congratulations on getting the role of Pogi, the newest Fraggle on Fraggle Rock. And I really didn't understand what that meant at the time. But come to find out that Pogi was a character that they wanted to bring in a little bit more, and was kind of a bit of a, they called him a lovable twerp. And anyways, I got the gig. I embraced it. I did the best I could with that, and it parlayed, and the character became well loved. And then I started writing, and then I started inventing toys, and here I am
on a podcast. It all led to this for both of you. All those years of hard work and sweat, you got here. You did it. This is the pinnacle of your careers here. Now, both stories are amazing. I honestly love the fact that it's kind of screwed up all my question and answers, because my biggest question is like, when did you start like feeling like you were creative? But you both obviously felt very early in your lives. Touche, you talk about the hat, the first hat you got, and it was sort of like a mythical sort of capturing of a an icon, and turns you into this idea of they mean more than just covering your head, right? And Kanja, like, it sounds like you were like from day one when they gave you your first toy in the crib, you were already playing. So here's my question for you. This is the soul reaching question. Can anybody feel that way? Do you feel like anybody in the universe, and maybe it's when they first are born, or it's an event that happens, can anybody find their creative muse? Like, you feel that that's something that can happen?
I personally do believe so, because for me, as much as I shared my story, reality is that I was unaware of myself being creative until quite later on. So I always grew up in a very creative family. I surrounded by musicians and fashion designers and artists, but it was so ingrained within the home. I didn't really know anything of it. So it didn't feel like, oh wow, we're creative or we're a creative family. I looked at my father and I just thought that that's what all men did. I thought, oh, all men could just make things with their hands, and all fathers could just draw what they see. And I just, honestly just assumed that was the case. And it wasn't until my sister was, studying to become a fashion designer. I remember she would sketch these really amazing like illustrations of like garments that she wished to make, and I would go upstairs, and a few hours later I'll come back down, and this garment that she sketches now an actual physical tangible thing, and I was like, wow, like that for me, I was around 16, 17. That was for me was like, oh wow, like that creative process to get from a notepad to an actual tangible product was just incredible to me, and that's when the light bulb went off, and that's when I was like, oh, that is something creative, and that is this kind of like trigger for me to realize, okay, now what are you going to do with it? Go and find your thing. And so I do believe that it is inclusive to everyone. I don't think creativity is exclusive. I think I think it just shows itself in different places and spaces. I have friends who are doctors and they find different ways to be creative. It might be in their stitching, it might be in their bedside manner. I think creativity just comes out differently.
Nice.
Yeah. No, I think those points are excellent, Latouche. Especially the fact that you found your creativity kind of later in life, because one of the things I would add to what you're saying, because I agree with all of that, is that I think we are born creative. I really do. I think if you want to see true creativity, you talk to a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old. I think it's unlearned. I think that creativity is taught out of a lot of children as they grow.
I like that.
But I think that it is a core part of who we are as humans. And my grandmother, she immigrated to Canada from Jamaica, and she used to jokingly call herself a dunce because she didn't go to school, and she didn't graduate from high school. But she was one of the most creative entrepreneurs I had ever met. I have a quick story that I remember being about 9 years old, and my grandmother would scan the newspapers back when the papers were actually paper, and she'd scan the papers in the back in the classified ads, and she would always do it. She was just always a very business savvy type woman, and she saw a listing for, I think it was like something ridiculous, like 1,000 pairs of leather shoes. Someone had clearly had like a shipment come in or whatever, and they were selling them for dirt cheap. They wanted to get rid of them, and so they were selling them for something like $3 a shoe, and a pair of shoes. And so she got $3,000 together. We bought it. We rented a truck to go pick them all up, and then she rented out she negotiated for a flea market stall, because she only said she just didn't need it for the month. She just needed it for 2 weeks. She booked it for 2 weekends. She booked it. And I remember us going in, and she sold each pair for $10 a pair, and she made $7,000 in 1 weekend.
Wow.
And they were genuine leather, and she just knew those opportunities. She was flipping home. So that's creativity, and so creativity is there in all of us. Chefs, just how people arrange their houses. Some people decorate and they don't see that as necessarily creativity. It's wonderful creativity. There's so many different ways you can express it. So I believe it's innate, and I believe that it just is either encouraged or not.
Do you think is it intuitive, or do you? I mean, what's your all's process? Do you structure your creativity? Do you have creative times? Do you, Stephen King is like write every day, right? No matter what. Like, do you set a time of, all right, this is the hour, I'm just going to sit and draw, or I'm going to do something new, unique?
No, not at all, not for me. I remember one time I was in this kind of creative funk. I think it lasted 6 weeks. No matter what I did, I just couldn't get to a place where it flowed. And for me,
Yeah.
when I'm really in my zone, creativity just flows, whether I'm restoring a hat or trying to create a campaign for something, like it just flows. It just comes very natural. And for 6 weeks, I was just in this funk, and I tried everything, and nothing worked. And then one day, a friend of mine reached out to me, who's a stylist, fashion stylist, and she's like, "Hey, I'm working on this editorial, and I know you don't make hats specifically for people, but I need a hat." And she sent me this mood board, and instantly ideas just came running out. And I remember creating this really beautiful piece, and I sent it to her, and she was like, "Oh, this is beyond perfect. How you would manage to capture what I was thinking from this mood board." And I was thanking her because I said, "You brought me out of a funk. I was in this real creative funk for 6 weeks, and you just brought me out." And I haven't been in a funk since, and that was like almost 10 years ago.
It
And
just took outside inspiration, someone to like,
yeah, outside inspiration. And then I think also one of the things about me is like my play of creativity comes from everywhere and anywhere. And what I mean by that is, although primarily, especially when I'm speaking about hats, I never really went the traditional form when it came to making and designing hats. Like I would be inspired by architecture for the most part. And so what I would do is I would go down London, looking at all the different architecture in London, and then taking pictures of them, coming home, and then creating hat shapes that mimicked what I saw.
that's
And
cool.
that's kind of how like my designs became quite abstract, was because of that inspiration. So yeah, I don't typically get my inspiration from like your typical places for someone that designs hats, but I like that. I like going to random places. The main thing I'm looking for is I want my perspective to be shifted or to be challenged.
No, I think that's actually a really good point. I've been working in toys for so long. Honestly, the last aisle I go to look for inspiration is the toy and game aisle. I love bouncing around the stationery or the home goods and those kind of places. Um, I just think it takes to get outside inspiration, you have to go outside your comfort zone and go to places where maybe they're doing a different, there's a different trend there. There's a unique design uh, happening in that field, or it's just you're not stealing someone else's idea because you're looking at the same exact category. Kanya, how about you? Like, where do you find your inspiration? How do you dig deep when you're feeling like there's nothing there?
I mean, I feel very fortunate. I was raised by a family that embraced and encouraged my imagination. And I'm diagnosed now with ADHD, but back then, um, my
Aren't we
imagination was
all though? Like everybody now.
to some degree. I
Yeah,
think that the thing for me was that I was allowed to be me, and within that, I was allowed to just be curious. And so, and that's not the case for all kids. I know that curiosity is often shut down by adults. Like, stop asking questions, stop, don't look at that, leave that alone. There's a lot of that goes on. But I was the opposite. I was encouraged to find things out, to figure things out, to explore. So I spent a lot of time imagining, and for me, it's funny because you talk about creativity. I'm always thinking. I'm always imagining. I'm not a hat maker, but I've already designed some hats in my head just talking to Latouche, because talking to Latouche has inspired me. And Lee, when we talk, a lot of times you may not realize it, but I walk away and I'm inspired and I start thinking. And I just allow my brain to go in these different places. So my imagination, it's a muscle, right? And it's funny because I was actually talking with my eldest son and recently, and he's saying, oh, these people are so good at this or that. He's into painting right now. He's painting models. He's quite good at it. And I said, son, a lot of people think that you have to be born with a talent. And the truth is, most people are not. Some people have an affinity or it becomes a little bit easier, but I always say you have to work at anything, and the best thing to work at are the things that you love,
yeah.
right? So love everything so you can get better at it. And the one piece that I think stuck with me when I was talking to him is, I said to him, most people are not better than you at anything. They are experienced. And I think if you look at the word experience, so many people think, well, I haven't done this. I haven't reached that level. the truth of the matter is, when I was getting into puppetry, I set a camera up in my basement and I just puppeteered regularly. And I reviewed my footage and I said, oh, that didn't look good. But that did look good, right? Finding the balance between what worked and what didn't. And what I didn't realize is that there were some people who were professional working, but I was quickly catching up to them because of the number of hours I was
Yeah.
clocking of recording. So that's, I would just say, to answer your question, inspiration is there everywhere. I just allow myself to imagine whether I'm walking, whether I'm talking to someone. I have a lot of curiosity, which is I spend a lot of time. Like I could ask Latouche a billion questions right now. I'm trying to
Go ahead,
control
man.
everything.
I'm out of questions. If you want to,
So,
Wait, but can we before we move on, can we just sit there for a second because you said something that really kind of stuck with me. It's like you mentioned about like the hours, right, and putting in the time. It's interesting. I feel like growing up in, and you can give me your side of it as well, Kanja. Growing up in a Jamaican household, there is a sense of tradition that comes from the culture. So much so that like I grew up around like seamstress and like tailors and shoemakers and stuff like that. And it was really interesting because it was like how can we pass that down to the next generation? You know, whether they wanted to learn it or not, it was like how can we pass it down? But then it was also kind of like it made me really drawn to the creative process, but people's commitment to the creative process. I find that quite exciting. Like I like being a fly on the wall. I like kind of seeing, an inside look into the people's creative process, but I also quite like that commitment. I think
yeah,
there's something quite unique and special about someone's commitment to the process. You know, especially now in this era where everything is so quick and everybody wants to kind of become famous overnight. So I think there's something to be said about one's commitment to the process.
yeah.
yeah. Go ahead, Kanya. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
I mean, I know. I was just gonna say. I mean, it goes back to that whole thing about finding those things that you love, right? And
Yeah,
I think that when you find something that you love, you are committed. You're committed because it brings you joy,
yeah,
there's that saying, find what you love as a job, as your job, and you'll never work a day in your life.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that I think that's the hard part for a lot of people, right? So like one is I just want to say I'm so glad that your career ended up where it is, Kanya, because like if you hadn't become a professional Muppeteer or puppeteer and you had all those videos in your basement of you playing with puppets, that would have been really awkward at the end. But but you found it. Like I think for a lot of people, it's hard to like, they try a lot of things, but they don't necessarily go deep. How do you guys feel about like, do you have to go deep or can you skim the surface and keep trying things and build experience? I know the answer, but like,
I
what
like
is
that.
your
I like that a
opinion?
lot.
Like, what is your opinion on like, do you have to go deep on something to feel like you're creative at it, or is it?
Ooh, I like that. That's a great question. You know why it's a great question? Because for me, my argument to that is I feel like it's the difference between confidence and competence. I feel like the culture I grew up in, it was very much they wanted us to be confident in what it is that we was pursuing. You know, my father would always say, whatever you want to do, I'll support you, but commit to it. And really, make an effort to become, great at it. And I think that confidence versus competence is really important. I would argue growing up in London as well as like kind of being around like craftsmanship and history and heritage there is this sense of like encouragement to be confident in what you're doing. Whereas now I'm living in America, I'm like, oh, it's like you can, and it's going to sound harsh to say this, but I feel like you can kind of get away with having this grandiose personality and this charisma, and that can outshine the confidence, which then in turn requires you to not be as competent in the work that you do, but your personality outshines it, and so no one really cares. Whereas in the UK and growing up in a Jamaican household, it's very much more like, hey, let's get yourself to a place where it's like, if you had to do it, you could do it, on the spot, and it's funny because I remember when I started doing hat restorations, I would do it at my hat Sony, which is my hat themed events. I would do it at my hat Sony events, and this guy came and he gave me his hat to be restored, and I was restoring it on the spot live. And he goes, "Oh, I didn't know you could actually do this." He goes, "I thought when I was watching it on Instagram, I thought you was just doing it for show. Like I didn't know it was actual something that you could actually do." And so for me, that just ties it in. It's just proof that it really is important to kind of get to a place where you're actually confident and competent enough to actually do your art.
Yeah, no, that's so well said. And I don't know if I mentioned, I'm also like Jamaican culture, and there's a pride, there's a Jamaican pride. It's funny, it's such a little island, but we are, to use Jamaican vernacular. Sometimes we walk around, we're bossy. So
Yes,
so we
absolutely.
can boast about what we do, but that comes from that confidence, but the confidence cannot be shallow. It has to be substantial. It has to be based in something and rooted in something. And so
Absolutely.
I've always believed in myself. I've always been confident. I've always been raised to be confident. I'm a lighter skinned Jamaican man, but I am a Jamaican first and foremost. That this is how I see myself, and I always have. And this goes back to who we are as people, right? And it's okay. There are some people who just want to touch the surface. There are a lot of people who want to do different things, but don't really want to um, know them intimately, or get to a certain point. That's fine. Like, everyone has their own likes and dislikes. Some people love buffets. I do not. I don't like buffets, right? But that's fine. If you like buffets, that's great.
Depends what
So
kind of buffet, honestly.
yeah, for me, it's just indulgent and overeating. Like, I know I would overeat, and
Yeah.
I don't want that. I don't want that for myself. So you know what I mean. I make myself sick. So that's just me. But that doesn't mean it's not a great thing. My daughter loves buffets. Anyways, off the buffets. But
That's our
but
next
my
podcast. Is it buffet? Does this buffet?
but
Um,
I'm one of those people who, because I found puppetry and I love puppetry, that led me to finding writing, and I've learned to love writing because I was the child in school who was pulled out of classroom because I struggled with reading and writing. So if you had
Yeah,
asked me if I
same.
had a career as a writer as an adult, I would never have thought that as a child I would ever do that. But it was my creativity, it's my love of storytelling, and I've become practiced in writing. So I've become better in writing. So I'm able to express myself. And then my love of toys. And, I'm a builder. So I've always been an artist. And, because I build, I love sculpture. So now I build puppets. So all these things I love, but because I love them, I go deep because they're
Yeah, me
powerful.
and your friends now, by the way, just so you know this.
I love this.
I'm
I knew. I
smiling.
knew.
I'm smiling so hard because I'm the same. I struggled reading and writing, but now as an adult, I love writing and I love reading. So
I was as well. I was a terrible writer, man. I don't know how I got out of college, but my first job, I went and interned at a PR firm in DC, and the CEO said, "Hey, can you write a press release?" And I'm like, "Sure." Cocky little 21-year-old coming into the office. So I wrote this thing, and I tried to remember everything that I was taught at college, and I went and presented to him, and he, read it over, came back to me, and it was like he took a big red paintbrush and just slashed it all. But the thing was, he was like, "No, this is good. It's really good. I just want to show you a few things." And if it wasn't for that encouragement and like kind of hounding me on it and helping me get better, now I love writing. It's one of my favorite things to do. But you need like that guidance. You need somebody to kind of show you the way. Have you guys had that mentorship? Or do you provide that mentorship to other people?
Latouche, I'm curious. I want to hear your answer.
um, I've never really
Sounds like
had
you're the
mentors,
guy who just went. I don't think
but it's weird. It's like I've always wanted it, and I think I said this to you when we last spoke, Lee. It's like I've always wanted mentorship. I've always kind of wanted to be in the corporate world. I tried to get into marketing in the
you're
corporate
way too
side. I tried to get
talented for
into
the corporate
advertising.
world, man. No, come
And I
on.
just couldn't get in. I just couldn't get in. Like, I tried everything. I tried internships, and I would always be told, "Oh, you're too experienced," or I'll try, applying. But it was always weird because I would have these interviews and be like, "Oh, you're too overqualified for this position. Let's try and create a position," and then they would struggle to create a position, or they would be like, "Oh, how do you know the CEO? That's so strange. Why do you know the CEO?" And there's always this like really just back and forth. But essentially, in the absence of trying to get in, I just made my own way, and so, I couldn't get an internship. I never went to college, and so I taught myself. And in the absence of not getting an internship, I built my own brand and learned marketing that way, and would help friends with their brands. And, that became my thing, And so, yeah, never had a mentor. But I'd argue that I've become a mentor for others, so that's okay.
I think it's a good thing you didn't go corporate. Honestly, I think your raw
I don't
creativity.
know. I don't know.
I mean, in all honesty, is like corporate culture is really about conforming, and I think that's why a lot of people have struggled. A lot of creative people struggle when they go into a corporate setting. It's you're they want you to get into the structure. They want, even if you're in the design space, they still want you to get into the structure and instead of breaking molds and doing things. And I don't think I think for people like the two of you in this unique spaces that you're both in, I don't think the corporate world is for everybody. Everybody can be creative, right? I don't think everybody can be in the corporate world. It doesn't necessarily mean they should be there.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a big believer in that there's a there's a there's a destiny, a path for each and every one of us, and like I do believe that. I used to believe when I was younger that I had to control everything, and through my life experiences, I've gotten to a point where I realize that I actually don't have to control everything, and I do believe in a divine outcome, a positive outcome. I trust in noticing signals around me. It's the idea. I'm part Irish as well, so the idea of luck of the Irish is all about a mindset, right? So the joke is that a regular person might step in a pile of dog dirt and get upset about their day and their day's ruined, but
You're
an
so
Irish
polite, you Canadians. Dog dirt.
but
You can say it. Come on.
but an Irish person would step into it and go, "It's a lucky thing I didn't have my good shoes on." Right, and so it's the perspective
Yeah.
of what's around us. And I too didn't have a formal mentor, but I found mentors. I mean, a mentor, not someone who guided me through my whole career, but I believe that mentorship can come at any place and any time from anyone. And sometimes it's just that singular conversation you have with someone. There are wonderful people that I met. A Canadian puppet builder, puppeteer named Noreen Young, who just recently passed, was a mentor to many, many puppeteers over the years, and it's just giving of her time. Anyways, and there's people that I've met. There are peers that I've met, and Touche, you talked about working with peers and people that and helping friends out. To me, that is a mentorship, right? And I give back the same way. Like I constantly tell myself. This is sort of my own mantra. What have I done recently to help others that does not directly serve me?
Yeah. That's a good
And
one.
and that's what it is. And if I pick something, well, I hired them for my show that served me. What have I done that is for someone else that does not directly serve me?
Yeah, I like that.
All right. Rapid fire. You ready? You on the edge of your
Yep,
seat? You ready to go? All
ready.
right. A creative tool you can't live without. Latouche.
Does it have to be a tangible tool? Because I mean, I would say my laptop. I love my laptop, but I would say nature, like
All right.
silence, being able to walk out in space.
Perfect. All right. An idea you wish you'd thought of first, Kanya.
Oh, GI Joe.
Ah,
GI Joe. I wish I had thought of GI
you're
Joe.
two
I love
decades
GI
too
Joe.
late for that one.
Yeah, that's fair.
Sorry.
For me, I would say the idea of being able to, I don't know, the idea of being able to 3D printing. 3D printing would be incredible
All right.
to come up with the idea.
Yeah, I like that. All right. A piece of advice you ignore regularly. Latouche.
Apply myself.
What is it? Okay.
My wife was always saying, "Hey, you need to apply yourself to this or apply yourself to that," and I tend to pick and mix with what I want to apply myself to.
All right. Kanya.
Any advice that starts with "you have to"?
All right. What is the most absurd idea you've ever actually followed through on?
I guess, yeah, for a hat parties. I decided for a hat parties, and it came about because I was at one of my friend's studio, who was a milliner, and on her kettle, she had two kettles. One kettle was for pouring tea, of course, and the other kettle was for her hats. But on the side of it, she wrote in a black marker, it said hats only. And in that moment, I said to myself, huh, I'm going to start throwing hat parties. It became my thing, and I was able to travel the world throwing hat parties.
Brilliant.
I love it. For me, it was when my children were younger. They used to love slapstick and lowbrow humor, and I used to create a character known as Santa Farts, and essentially it was the idea that Santa was lactose intolerant and really struggled with kids leaving milk, and I would just do a lot of farting sounds as scenarios, and then I ended up doing a bunch of video series just for them, and I posted it online.
I love that. Not Santa farting, but the idea of it. Mine was starting a podcast. So I just want to thank you guys for being here. This has been such a good conversation. I usually ask the question about imposter syndrome, and I felt like the two of you don't have it at all. Like you're so confident and happy in what you do. I mean, I struggle with it. I know creative people, everybody struggles with it. They don't talk about it as much. But, you guys just seem to love what you do. You seem to have the confidence of trying new things and going deep into your passionate and your passions and things like that. But the one question I do have to ask you is we need a name for this podcast. So I need you to come up with a name that you think you would like to say it. So, Latouche, what's a good name for this podcast?
I have two. One is everybody is a creative. I think it's clear, it's obvious. But then my other one is can everybody be creative? And the reason why I say that is because I like the idea of shifting perspective. I want to challenge people's perspective. Yeah.
All right.
Everybody is a creative, or can everybody be a creative?
I can see the logo. It could be both, right? Let's work it together. Kanja.
Okay, so I would say if there was one that was specifically just for this episode, I would say Jamaican creativity, Jamaican creativity, the way it should be with Lee. Anyways, that's a long title.
You're making me creative.
Jamaican me creative. There we go.
And I'm not gonna do the accent. I'm not gonna try to do it. It's that would probably be a bad scene, but that's what I love about this conversation. That you guys, you're fun. You're always like the two happiest people I know. Like honestly, and I think it's just because you love what you do, and like you said, Kanya, you'll never work again if you're doing what you love, and it's amazing. So thank you guys for showing us how creativity transforms not just what we make, but how we see the world and what we want to be in that world. So this podcast needs a name. Podcast still nameless, but we're still creating. So thanks, guys. Appreciate you coming on board.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.